Okay, guys, here it is, the big finale on this mini series that I've been doing. Stories that I wish made it into the book or the movie Blackhawk Down, but they didn't make it. Well, today I get a chance to talk to a guest that I have been trying to line up on this show for months. This is a famous entertainer. Well, I'll just tell you, this is Matthew Marsden, one of the stars of the movie Blackhawk Down. And the reason why I looked forward to talking to Matthew is he is the epitome of what I respect in the entertainment industry when you have a great heart and great talent and hard work. So hang on, this is going to be great. Here comes my interview with Matthew Marsden on this episode of Unbeatable.
These stories of triumph over adversity will help you handle your toughest days in life and become unbeatable.
Real quick, before I get into the interview with Matthew, I want to remind you I couldn't do this episode today if it wasn't for the guys and gals at the Solomon Foundation. And they're committed to helping the local church grow. So if you want to connect with the Solomon Foundation, they can help you get an excellent return and make an eternal impact on your investments. Check them out at thesolomonfoundation.org. Now here's my interview with Matthew Marsden on this grand finale episode of Unbeatable. Hey, Matthew, thanks for taking some time and working this into your very busy schedule to be with me on this episode of Unbeatable.
Absolute pleasure. It's actually an honor to be on this with you. So yeah, it's a big moment for me.
I'm going to go back in time and just tell everybody who's listening, the first time that we met, you were relatively new to your acting career, and I met you on this military base while you were training up for the movie Blackhawk Down. I think we actually grabbed some breakfast together at the local IHOP, and then you guys all flew over to Africa to go film the movie Blackhawk Down. Is that the first time we connected?
That is right. Yeah, that's actually right. Yeah, I'd totally forgotten about that, to be honest. But you're entirely right. Yeah, we did.
I haven't
right.
forgot about it. I was so impressed with you at that IHOP before you flew off to go film the movie that I was like, I got to talk to this guy some more.
That's right. You know what's funny? Because we spoke, obviously we've spoken before on the phone, and I didn't put two and two together. So that's amazing. You know, I completely remember now. I completely remember. By the way, yeah. I wanted to show you this because, and this is a little bit of surprise for you. Yeah.
Oh, he's got the Ranger t-shirt hanging up or showing off the Ranger t-shirt. Yeah. I love it, man. Looks good.
This is what I wore when we were training at Fort Benning. And I don't have the little Ranger shorts. I don't have those. I don't know why. Maybe I burned them or something like that.
That's because we called them Ranger panties, and everybody hated Ranger panties. So yeah, you probably burned them.
But I've got my I still have my my Grey Army T-shirt that they gave us, and the Grey Army sweater. And we went to Ranger Joe's as well, and we bought some stuff. I still have my airborne top because I wanted to.
Awesome.
When we went over, I wanted to keep wearing it, and this is a real prized possession for me, and especially since after then I've had Rangers send me gear and said, no, you can. I'm like, well, I don't. They're like, no, you don't understand. You can wear that. Like, you can wear it.
Yeah.
And it's it's a very strange thing to be associated with something so clearly all throughout my life. Blackhawk Down was a real seminal moment for me and a real transformative moment for me in my life. And meeting you guys was, I can't tell you, I mean, it started me on this journey of discovery about why America is so great. Yeah. And I think that you guys really typified that and meeting that moment, the Ranger orientation, right, that we did.
Yeah.
And then met you guys afterwards, was really, really, like I said, it changed my life forever.
You and I talked about this on the phone several months back, and this is part of what I want to get into in our conversation, how that movie impacted not your acting career, but how it impacted you personally. I will tell you, I didn't realize the what you guys put into that movie until I met you that last day. I had breakfast with you guys before you all went off to go film that movie. I had no idea the amount of time and energy that all of you guys that were playing Rangers in Blackhawk Down put into preparing for this role. And Matthew, I said it to you over the phone, but I want to say it in front of the listening audience. Man, you killed that role. All of you guys did, but a couple of you really, really stood out in my mind, and you're one of them. I know who you played in the movie, but for those people that are listening who don't recognize the character that you played, would you tell them who you played in the movie?
Yeah, I played Specialist Dale Sizemore, who
Uh
since
huh.
after we become friends on social media, and you know, hopefully I'm going to meet him very soon. We haven't met, but he did send me. It's when he sent me a bottle of Three Rangers
Three
uh,
Rangers whiskey. Yeah.
whiskey, and it's funny. It's in my bar, and I'm like, nobody can touch this until I drink it with Dale.
Don't even
Uh,
breathe on it. Don't even get next to it, right?
Don't even go there. Yeah. So, I
Yeah.
mean, it was really amazing. I mean, it's one of those things where not only you're playing someone who is real, but you're playing someone who you can talk to. You know, you're playing
Yeah.
characters who are
Yeah.
characters, but real people who are there. And I think that that really, really weighed heavy on us as actors in a good way, not in a bad way, in a
Yeah.
good way. And going and meeting you guys and doing the training was super important. And when we went over there, I mean, I can speak for myself. You know, I mean, all of us took it very seriously. You know, but I think for me, it was the beginning of, as I said before, a real long journey
Yeah.
of an association with veterans, with especially with Rangers, Army Rangers, and the Army on the whole, and also in extension to that understanding why America is great and why it is such a special place. And that
Yeah.
really started, you know, when we did Ranger orientation in Blackhawk Down.
Well, it had such a big impact on you that after a long time after filming the movie, you have since become obviously anybody who's listening can tell by your accent that you didn't grow up in the United States. Let everybody know kind of how you got into acting, and then I want people to hear what where you live now and the change that's gone on in your life.
Okay,
But
well,
let's talk about how you got into into Hollywood in the first place.
well, I am an actor, so you know, actors love talking about themselves, Jeff. So you
Yes,
know,
of
this
course.
won't be.
And I just queued you up for it.
All right, so basically, I grew up in the UK. I also grew up in Mordor, right? Because that was the area that Tolkien based Mordor on. So it was um, a very industrial town, very working class. I was a single parent mom, and you have to understand this. I mean, this is the amazing thing about America. Like, if you want to be an actor, Americans will say, you go for it, like you can do it. And it doesn't matter what
Yeah.
social strata you come from. But I was very much on the lowest, right? And that does
All
not
right.
happen. It doesn't happen. In fact, the majority of my friends, you know, went off. One of my closest friends was a Grenadier Guard. So there was always this pull towards the military
Yeah.
which you know I really understood. But again, it was a very different motivation than what American soldiers or the ones that I know joined for, which was the love of country, wanting to serve.
Yeah.
It's a very different thing over there. It's more like, okay, I need a job. You know, I need to
Right.
get a trade. I mean, you know, you've worked with them.
Yeah.
Um, so, I mean, there's certainly pride of their unit. I mean, if you work with the Paras or the Royal Marines, any of those guys,
Yeah.
they're very, very proud, and they have a love of then, which was then the Queen, right? I can't speak now to who
Of
is in
course,
right
the
now,
current monarch.
but they love, you know, the guys love the Queen, and for good reason. You know, she was an amazing person, but anyway, so I kind of like I had this dream. I watched Star Wars, and I was like, "This
All
is
right.
amazing! You know, this is incredible. I would really love to do this." but that just wasn't an option. I'm like that's a dream. But the other thing I watched was Rocky, and it really
Nice.
inspired me. Yeah, it inspired me to say, hey, you know what? It doesn't matter where you come from. If you work hard
That's
enough,
right.
you can do it. And that was a real thing for me. And again, I don't think people understand how influential movies are around the world, American movies are
Yeah.
around the world, which is why it's so important for people to be involved, good people to be involved in the entertainment industry, because it's a projection. It's like, the US projects power, right? It also
Yeah.
does project morality, or used to
Yeah.
anyway.
I'm going to
So,
jump in at this point. There's some younger listeners who don't recognize the movie Rocky, but that movie influenced people all over the world. Just that iconic scene of Sylvester Stallone running up the stairs to the top of that monument and holding his boxing gloves up in the air while Eye of the Tiger is playing in the background. The whole world was motivated by that movie, but there's a bunch of young ones that have no idea how big of an influence that movie could have had on people. So
oh yeah, I mean,
obviously what Matthew and I are saying is both of us are a little bit older.
yeah, I mean, I'm sure you've still got it on your workout playlist, right? I mean, we all do.
Yeah,
I
that's
mean, I
right.
do. I still put Eye of the Tiger on
Eye of the Tiger. Yeah.
when I want motivation. Um, but so that movie, it really inspired me, and it made me think. You know what? If I work hard enough, I can overcome anything. And I always
Yeah.
say this to my kids, right? I will take hard work over intelligence every day, because
Absolutely.
that there is
Yep.
a virtue to that, right? There's a virtue to hard work. I mean, I mean, you passed, you went through Ranger training, so Ranger school. So, um, so anyway, I really believed in it. It just so happened that I was very good at memorizing lines. And even from when I was at school, I was always in the school play and that. And I was like, I might be able to actually make a living out of this. And then I got into something called the National Youth Theatre, it's kind of like the elite of the elite. It's kind of like the Army Rangers for actors, right?
Yeah.
For young
Sure. All
actors.
right.
And you get in there and you're like, okay, that it's kind of a stamp of quality. So,
Yeah.
for example, like I believe Daniel Day Lewis went there, Helen Mirren went there.
Wow.
Oh yeah, Daniel Craig went there. So you can
Uh
look
huh.
at the list of actors that went through that system. Orlando Bloom went. There's a bunch of people that went through, and that kind of gave me an opening, because um, a lot of people that I was at National Youth Theatre with, that their parents were famous, right? So they had that route, right? Everyone had their route.
Yeah.
It was
Right.
very. I don't want to say it's elitist, because obviously they let me in, but I think the acting for the most part is elitist, right? I mean,
Yeah.
in England anyway, you have to. Although the ones that seem to break through, like Gary Oldman, who is an
Uh
incredible
huh.
actor, was very working class, and he just managed to break through his talent. But it's very rare. It's the exception rather than the rule. So I got in there, was doing a degree in performing arts, which isn't worth the paper it's written on.
All right.
I always
Yeah.
say to my kids, don't ever think that you're going to go to college and do a degree like that, because I'll be like,
Yeah.
no. And they're like, but
That's right.
Dad, you. And I was like, forget it. Don't even point to me. I'm an anomaly. And then I basically got an agent. And the first job I got was the third biggest show on British television. And I was
Really.
on the, yeah, that's the first job I got. And I was on proper job. And I was on that for, I want to say, like 3 months. And then I came out of that. And then at that point, people started to pay attention to who I was. And I was auditioning for like very, very
Uh
big
huh.
projects at that point. And I got this call for this show called Coronation Street, which is, I mean, it's a soap, but it's more than that. At that point, 14 to 15 million people per episode were
Wow.
watching it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Giant. And people like Ben Kingsley and Ian McKellen and Joan Wally
Oh
Kilmer,
yeah. Uh
they,
huh.
they were all on it. They wanted to be on it. It's it's an iconically cultural show, or a culturally iconic show. And so I got it, and that was it. Like, my life completely changed overnight. I was, to give you some kind of an idea, that we shot, I think it was 3 or 6 weeks in advance. And I can't remember now, it's been such a long time, but I would go to the local sandwich shop and get a sandwich, which you'd walk out the gates of the studio, the
Uh-huh.
sandwich shop was there, and I'd come back and I'd eat my sandwich. And I did that every day. And then it was 3rd of March 1997, which was my birthday. First episode came out, and I went to go out with my sandwich,
What
and
a
there was
birthday present.
boom. Yeah, the 4th of March, I couldn't go out the studio anymore, and it was insane. Within three
Yeah.
months, I won the best newcomer at the National Television Awards, and then I only wanted to be in the show for a year because I didn't want to be typecast, because most people
Yeah.
never leave that.
Typecast. Definitely. Yeah.
Most people never leave the show because it's a great show and you make a lot of money. But I always wanted to do more uh, for myself, challenge myself more in different roles. And so I left, and I actually signed a recording contract with Columbia Records. And
Yeah.
I did.
I was going to ask you to tell people about your voice, because you're not just an actor. You've got lots of talent in different areas. What was the recording contract for?
Well, that was so. As an actor, look, as someone that's growing up, who grew up with nothing, I wanted to maximize the amount of chances that I had to actually
Uh-huh.
make money, like to get work. So I was like, well, if I need to do musicals or whatever, then I need to be able to sing. And I'd always loved singing, and so when I was going through college, I was going and I was doing singing lessons, and I actually got offered a recording contract before I even got any acting jobs.
Yeah.
And I just didn't feel like I was mature enough for it. And as it turns out, even when I got one, I wasn't mature enough for it. But so I got offered a recording contract by multiple record companies and signed with Columbia Records because, again, Columbia has this history,
Yeah.
American
Sure.
artists
Yeah.
and, crossover artists from film. And I was like, this is perfect. So I did that. I did a song with Destiny's Child, Beyonce. And then there was
You were a backup singer for Beyonce. Is that what you just said?
no, Beyonce was a backup singer for me. How about
I
that?
love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
That's
where
what
is
I'm
she
talking
now,
about.
huh? Where is
Yeah.
she now?
That's
Yeah, she's
right.
the biggest star in the
You
world.
put Beyonce on the map.
You
You
know
can
it.
go ahead and quote him.
I'm gonna take that. Yeah, no, no. I mean, it
Yeah.
was it was amazing to do that. I mean, that was quite something. Uh, but that was around the time that people didn't know what was going on with digital. I know this is hard for
Yeah.
the
Right.
youngsters to understand, but people are like, where's it going? At
Yeah.
some point, people were saying, it was so crazy just for your listeners, people were saying, well, maybe we'll have stores where you go and you plug your phone in or your iPod in and you download from there, and
Yeah.
that's how you buy it. And, like nobody could even comprehend doing what we do right now,
I
right?
remember that period very, very clearly.
Well,
Yep.
it was a very kind of disruptive time for the music industry. So it was really like people didn't know what they were doing, which way it was going to go, blah blah blah. By the way, there's probably going to my front doorbell's going to ring
Sure.
in a minute, so I
Yeah.
apologize for that.
No worries.
Anyway, I have delivery. Um, it was really in turmoil. The guy that signed me left the company, which is always a disaster
Yeah.
for artists because the new guy that comes in always wants to put his stamp on. And so I didn't like the way that it was going there. So I basically left the company. I had a great time, it was amazing. Couple of years doing music, going around the world. I mean, it's every person's dream, right? I think anyway, everyone at some point
Yeah.
has stood in the shower and like been singing. So anyway, I did that, and then I came away from that, and I found out that there was a movie being made with Michael Caine called Shiner, and it was playing a boxer, and
Uh-huh.
and so I'm very good friends with a guy called Richie Woodall, who, if you guys remember the 1988 Olympics in Seoul, uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
when Roy Jones was robbed of the gold
Mm-hmm.
medal and he got the silver, my buddy Richie got the bronze. So he went on to be the WBC super middleweight champion of the world.
Uh-huh.
So when I started training with him, and when I came to audition for the role, so I knew it was going. The guy said, "Can you box?" I said, "I'll fight anyone for this role, anybody.
All right.
I
All
might not
right.
win. I might not
That's
win,
right.
but again, that's kind of like coming from the background that I came from. It was a little bit rough, it was a little bit rough. And so, we knew that we had to be able to handle ourselves. And so I wasn't afraid of that. So anyway, I did that. And from there, Hollywood came calling because Michael had just been nominated for Cider House Rules.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And he actually said that this movie, Shiner, that we did was the role that he was born to play. So we anticipated that it was going to be huge. Andy Serkis was in it before he went to be Gollum, which is kind of funny.
Yeah.
And then I came over to Hollywood and I heard about this movie, Blackhawk Down. And what was funny was they were like, yeah, it's about the Rangers. I was like, Texas Rangers? I know about Texas Rangers.
Yeah, the baseball team?
Yeah. I was like, what? And they're like, no, the Army Rangers. And so I read, they actually gave us the book to read.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And they said, read the book, Mark Bowden's book. And I originally went up and auditioned for Durant. Because I think that was most of the guys, we auditioned for Durant, I think, Mike Durant's role. And it was the scene where, the guy comes in and he says, you shouldn't have come here, and he's all busted up. So I did that. And then they said, actually, you're going to play an Army Ranger. And apart from, I think, maybe a couple of the big guys that had already established themselves, Eric had just done Chopper and then he was playing Norm. Hooten, or Hoot as they call it in the film. The majority of us were like, we just want to be in this movie because we knew. And what a lot of people don't realize, if they cast their mind back, the war hadn't started yet. The war in Iraq hadn't started.
That's right.
So this was the last engagement outside of the special operations. And when I say that, you know what I mean? Like the guys that were dropping and doing other stuff. This was the last engagement that America had been in, that was your engagement in Somalia, right? There hadn't been pretty much anything for all those years. So it was a really, really huge deal. And so we got told, okay, you're going to go to boot camp in Fort Benning. And I was like,
and you got to cut your hair. And that's right. You got to cut your hair and you got to actually look like you know what you're doing.
And so what was funny about that, I think it's on a special feature somewhere where we went and got our haircut. It was awesome. And I think that what a lot of people don't understand, and obviously you do, is that, I know it sounds silly, but everyone getting their haircut the same unites you immediately. Like, you look at everyone and you're like, we're a part of a team. It's like psychologically, it was amazing. The one thing that I'll never forget that I think we messed up on, to be honest, was we turned up there and we had desert gear on. And everybody else on the base was wearing green. And I was like, we really stick out, but it was going there, getting the classes. I mean, for me, it was a dream come true because I was kind of like, I was doing what the other profession I would have actually loved to have done without having to really commit for 4 years. And, but what was, I'll tell the audience this, there was a couple of things that happened to me, which was really amazing, was I'd never held a firearm, never used a firearm before. And,
all right.
And they'd given me, we all had the old M16s at the time, with the solid stock and everything.
Right.
And I remember getting that firearm and turning like that, and I flagged someone, and one of the Rangers went whack,
just went berserk, right?
Dude, they like walloped me.
Of course.
never, ever done that again.
Takes one time. Yep. It only has to happen once.
So what do you do? Because for people that don't understand, it's all a game. You don't realize that at the end of the boomstick, there's something that can,
That's right.
You're going to die. So that was quite something. And I've spoken about this before, but I think this is the jumping off point for me was we were at I don't know what you call it now. It's like in the Brits call it the kill house, right? But we were there doing
That's
CQB
right. We call it
stuff.
the shoot house. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So, for people that don't know, I mean, maybe you can explain it to them, Jeff, like what that is.
Yeah,
Um,
sure. So all the walls are designed to absorb bullets, and the roof is open, but there's doors, there's windows. It's designed to look like a building. And then you put warriors in those rooms, and you put targets in the rooms, and you let them go and shoot in those rooms. And people, friendly forces get killed if they don't know what they're doing. And on the tops of the walls are walking platforms for guys to observe what's happening in the room and to kind of make sure that nobody kills each other in that room, but also make sure that you know what you're doing as soon as you enter the door. That's the very short definition of the shootouts. Go
it's
for it.
perfect. I can still, it's still etched in my mind because we got
Yep.
to walk along those gangways and we watched you guys do it. It is unbelievable when you see the real guys go through that. When they're stacking on the door, squeeze on the shoulder, and you go.
They
I mean,
flow so
oh,
smoothly. Yep.
it is unbelievable. And you get your corners. You get your guys under. I still remember it vividly. The training was so good that we got. And I was outside, and because we were stacking in groups of four, right? So I was waiting my turn, and I remember sitting there, and there was a young ranger there, and I think I was like 27 when I did the film.
Uh-huh.
So what was weird was if you look at the groups of rangers and the Delta guys in the film, there's like 21-year-olds, 22-year-old young guys, and then there's 30 and up. And I was right in
Uh-huh.
the middle, right? So I was
Yeah.
I was I was kind of like in between the two. And even in the film, like I spend the majority of my time with Eric because we're
Yeah.
split off going back in. So it was kind of weird for me being in that middle age, older than these guys and younger than those guys. But so I was sitting outside with this ranger. So I was older than him. I was a good 5 years older than him. And I was talking to him. I was doing my act a bit. I was like, so what's your motivation?
Yeah.
And
Right.
I said, why did you join the army? And he said, for freedom. And that was like, still to today, it's like it's a nuclear bomb that went off in my
Yeah.
brain. And I was like, hang on a minute, well, like I said before, my friends went in to get a
Yeah.
trade, to go into SIGINT, to
Uh-huh.
learn,
Right.
how to, and I went, and it was just this moment of clarity, where I said to him, you'd die for me, wouldn't you? And he went, yes, sir. And I just went, this is the greatest country in the world.
Uh-huh.
And I need to know everything about it. I need to, I looked at this guy and I'm like, he meant it. Because I think
Yeah.
a lot of people get carried away, in Europe, like freedom, freedom, freedom. And you don't really understand it. And think about Americans that they really understand what freedom is.
Yeah.
I mean, it's going away from that now, but there's something like fiercely independent in Americans that really understand that freedom matters. And I think in Europe, it's a little bit like, okay, well, we're free. And then you come to America and you go, well, actually, you're not at all. You think you
That's
are.
right.
It's the illusion
Yeah.
of freedom, but you don't have true freedom. And that's why, I mean, I could go off on one about the Second Amendment, but all that was started me on this path of going, why is it that a man would say this? Why is it that a man that, I mean, it's not like he's not really committing something, right? Because
That's exactly right. Yeah.
he's
He's
willing to
he's
pay the
putting all on the
ultimate price.
line for that.
And for me, and he doesn't know me, but he understands that freedom is so important to me that he is willing to die for
Yeah.
me. It's kind of like somebody else we know, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Somebody who's willing to die for, yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, that was the beginning of my love affair, my real love affair with the United States of America. Um, because you can, it's kind of like akin to, looking at a picture of Cindy Crawford or whatever and going, wow, she's really beautiful, right? That's really beautiful. I'd really love to date
Yeah.
her. And then when you actually meet her and you understand that there's all this, that there's so much more to
Yeah.
that. And actually the beauty is a lot deeper than that.
Yeah.
You're like, wow, it's transformative. So, I started reading, and this was at the same time I was finding I was going more into my faith. It's really,
Uh-huh.
both kind of happening at the same time,
That's right.
which was amazing, and made a lot of sense. And America makes a lot more sense if you go along that route, and
Yeah.
understand the kind of, it's a um, parallel journey that, I look at people now, and the people that don't understand the United States and they don't understand one side of things is because they don't have faith and they don't
Yeah.
understand that there is something bigger. And all the founding fathers understood that, or most of them anyway,
Right. Yeah.
understood that. And it's certainly a country that was based upon those principles and values. So anyway, as I'm going through my kind of like, oh, hang on a minute, what was this like taxation without representation
Yeah.
thing?
Right.
Because they don't talk about that in the UK. My American
I'm
friends
sure
would be
they
like,
don't.
no, they'd be like, Happy 4th of July. I'm like, I don't understand why you think that's a big thing, but
Right.
okay. And then you read it and you're like, when I became a citizen, especially, like, the 4th of July is super important.
Yeah.
It's like, it really means something. It's not just somewhere where you can go and have a bunch of hot dogs and, it really means something. So, um, working with the Army Rangers on that, going off training, getting to know them, just so a lot of people, people that might not know, we had guys come out with us,
Yeah.
active duty
That's right. Yeah.
and former Rangers. So we spent a lot of time, and I'll tell you a story sometime about when I was in a club with a bunch of Army Rangers. Now this guy, um, I'll tell you quickly actually. So we were in this
Sure.
club. We're in this club, and I wasn't. I never drank, right? So I was really, I wasn't, three sheets to the wind or whatever. I was
Uh-huh.
sober, and basically, there was an instant where one of the locals said something racist, like really, really racist,
Yeah.
to a Somalian girl that was there. And I was talking to her because, she's Somalian, she's in
Sure.
Morocco.
Yeah.
And my friend had met her and started speaking to her before. And this guy came across and said something really, really bad. And I was like, hey, you don't do that. Don't speak to a lady like that and don't say that kind of thing, And the guy squared up to me in the club. And what was
All right.
really funny was I looked across like this and I just saw these high and tights go pop, 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 pop.
I was going to
It
say,
was like little
I could
beads.
tell you already, every guy
Oh,
in the room was like, okay, we're about to, notice the language, we're about to get in a fight.
and I looked and I was like, oh snap! Like that's the way it works. I forgot.
That's
And
right.
and
Yep.
and anyway, what happened then was a stunt guy came along and I could see all these Army Rangers like walking over, and the stunt guy goes, Matt, you need to go home. And so I went up the spiral staircase, and it was, let's put it like this, it was dealt with. But it was that
Yeah.
instant camaraderie, like the
Yeah.
instant, like, it, that to me showed me, even though I wasn't an Army Ranger, I was for that moment,
Yeah.
right? For
Right.
that moment, I was part of the team. And so anyway, like that, things like that. Then afterwards, obviously September 11th happened, and a lot of the guys,
Right.
including Sergeant Barreras, who tragically lost his life, which
Yeah.
was,
Right.
heartbreaking, shipped off. So I saw guys.
Yeah.
It went from a peacetime scenario to those guys literally going off and fighting for our
Yeah.
freedom,
Right.
and
Yeah.
it was really moving, to know that there were guys that were laughing and joking with us, were out there
Right.
doing the job.
Yeah.
And by the way, which they all wanted to do. I mean,
Of
this
course.
is the thing. Like every Army Ranger which is really amazing. It's a real warrior mentality. Like they wanted to test themselves.
Yeah.
They wanted to see if they could do
The
it.
the ultimate test.
It
Yep.
is, if they can deliver. And again, which is why I think that you guys were such an inspiration to them, because you'd done it. You've been there and you've been
Yeah.
in an impossible situation and acquitted yourself and got out of it, which was really unbelievable. But so anyway, that was my journey after that, and I realized that my life would be forever tied with the Ranger Regiment,
Yeah.
and I was very proud of that, and I was very proud of my association and the reaction that every single Army Ranger that I meet afterwards. What's kind of amazing is, and I'm sure you had it when back in the day when you came out of Somalia. These guys come up and said, "I joined because
Because
of
of you.
yeah,
Yeah.
because I mean
Because of Blackhawk Down.
because of this thing,
That's
because
right.
of Blackhawk Down." And it was like that for 10 years. Like 10 years, guys would come along and say, "I joined because of that film," and it was the depiction of the brotherhood and the honor,
Yeah.
and of course how badass you guys were. But it was the Ranger Regiment means so much more to me um, than a film and the unit. It
Yeah.
represents so much more, and it really meeting with you guys and doing that film set me on a course that, like I say, changed my life.
Yeah.
I've been working with veterans charities, and one of the most amazing things for me has been I've had veterans come and talk to me. It's kind of a weird scenario, and we spoke about this before. It's a weird scenario
Yeah.
where I am not a veteran, but so I have that distance for them that I'm not. I haven't gone through that, but they kind of associate me with veterans, so it makes it
Of
okay to
course.
talk. It
Yeah.
makes it okay
Yeah.
to talk. So one of the greatest things, honors and privileges I've had in my life is to be able to talk to veterans and help them in whichever way I can out of their particular situations that they might find themselves
Yeah.
in. And I know you've done a lot of that, and
Yeah.
it's I mean, that in and of itself is just the greatest honor of my life. To be able to
Yeah.
do that, and to be welcomed into that fold. And again, like I said, I mean, that and my faith are kind of, although they were parallel at one point, then they just go boop, and you realize that it's
Yeah.
it's it's all
Yeah.
the same.
There's a couple of reasons why I really wanted to do this interview with you. And by the way, this week is the 30th anniversary of Somalia. We've been scheduling interviews over the last several weeks in this podcast of stories that I wish were told in the book and the movie, but they just didn't make it. And the reason I'm doing this interview with you as kind of the final grand finale interview is because of a few things you just said. I hope the audience didn't miss this. Your discussion about America is not just from a guy who grew up in the UK looking at it, but you're now a US citizen. It meant that much to you that you went through the process and you have become a US citizen. So you can really speak about it from both angles. And you've represented your faith, and you've represented the roles that you played really, really well. In fact, the first time that you and I talked, it was because a couple of buddies of mine from Somalia said, "Jeff, do you know about Matthew, the man, not the actor? Do you know about him as the man?" And they told me a little bit about you, and they were like, "Hey," I said, "would you pass me his information? I would love to get connected with him." And that's how you and I talked kind of the first time, is just your reputation as a man, as a father, as a husband, as a voice in the entertainment industry that I'm really, really impressed by.
Well,
I also
thank
want
you.
people to hear.
I mean, let me just say this. It is the greatest honor for me, and a lot of people, because the entertainment industry is hostile to people with
It is.
views
Yeah.
like mine and yours. Uh, it's very, very difficult to be worried and afraid when you know real heroes that have put their lives on the line. And the worst that I can get is, I mean, all right, they might cancel me and I might not be able to earn, all right, but you know, I'm not running the Mogadishu mile, right? I'm not, in that situation. I'm not there seeing my friends and colleagues die. So it's the least I could do is actually open my
Yeah.
mouth and say it, because I've been very fortunate to be around real heroes that would do a lot more for me. So it's a little
Yeah.
bit pathetic if I wouldn't stand up for what I believe, especially when you guys fought for me to be able to express
To
it.
be able to do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I hope people heard your work and your role in making your way into the entertainment industry. It didn't come easy. You have done a lot of projects, a lot of movies that I am proud of, and not just Black Hawk Down. but you didn't get in by just being a pretty face. You went from Mordor to Hollywood through hard work. And I want people that are listening right now to hear, man, you did your work and you keep doing your work. And that's why you continue to make great, or you continue to do great roles in good projects because of the hard work you put into it.
Yeah, I think that part of it, and thank you for that. I think that part of it is gratitude. You need to get up every day and be grateful for everything that you have. I think that we're not guaranteed to open our eyes in the
Yeah.
morning, right?
Right.
So for me, I look and I go, hang on a second. I'm an actor. I'm a professional actor. That was a dream. If I cast my mind back, I always think about when you're 10 years old and ask yourself, if you
Yeah.
went back in a time machine
Right.
and you said, this is where I am now, would you take it? I'm like, yeah, I'd take it. That'd be awesome.
Right.
But the gratitude of having the opportunity to do it, the gratitude of actually being able to affect people's lives in a
Yeah.
positive way is really quite something. So I never take it for granted that I'm ever going to be working. I think that's part of
All right. Yeah.
it's part of being I think a working class kid. I'm always doing something, always trying to better myself, and
Right.
always because at the end of the day, what you realize, Jeff, and this is one of the, and this in a different way, right? It's all about getting that tab, right?
Yeah.
Getting that
Right.
tab, getting that scroll, it's everything. And then you get it, and then you're like, it doesn't define me.
That's right.
I mean,
That's right.
it defines an
Yeah.
element of you, but you think like that's it. And of course, you're going to be a ranger. You'll always be a ranger, but it's like that defines you. And then you're like, okay, all right. Well, now, if I'm tested by war, if I'm
Right.
just tested by war,
That's right.
then that's it. And you go and you do it, and then you're like, because there's a hole inside you that
That's right.
with everyone that you feel like that is, and I don't, I'm not going to go totally down that road, right? But this is the truth. There's a hole inside you that you constantly think that if you have enough of X, it's going to fulfill it, right? So for me, it's like, if I just become an actor, even if I become an actor, I'll do
Right.
community theatre. It doesn't matter. And then I get that, right? Well, let's go back even further than that. It's like if I get in National Youth Theatre, if I get there, then wow, that's amazing. I get there, and then you're like, yeah, but really, I want to work, right? Really, I want to work.
Right.
And then you get theatre, and you're like, yeah, but really, I want to do TV. And then you get TV, and you're well, really, I want to do film. And you get film, and you go, well, really, I want to be in Hollywood. You get in Hollywood, you win, a movie that wins 2 Oscars, legendary movie, one of the top 10 war movies of all time. Yeah, but really, I want the lead, and you get the lead, and then you're like,
and none of it fills you up.
It
That's
doesn't
right.
matter.
Yep.
It's all irrelevant. Like none of it matters. And the reason, one of the big tragedies is that, for that guy that wanted to get his Ranger tab that never got it, that was the thing for him. But it really
Right.
wasn't. He thinks it is, right? But when he gets it, and it doesn't matter. You see it all the time. And I think for me, that is, and we all struggle with it, right? We all struggle with, what is that thing that you're looking to fulfill you? And it's never, I can tell you right now, never enough fame, never enough money. It doesn't
That's
do
exactly
it.
right.
That's
Yep.
why you see so many miserable people around. And it really isn't about that. And I think that I'm very grateful every day that, I mean, even me, I'll get up every day and I'm like I'll do a course on this, I'll do a course on that. That's why I
Yeah.
went and I learned how to dive and became a PADI dive master. I got my black belt in Taekwondo. I got this
All
and that.
right. Yeah.
It's like, but the truth of the matter is what you really need is stillness and a connection to God, right? I mean,
Right.
that's the truth of it, because that's the only thing you can have. And it was, again, if I look back on my life, I'm sure if you look back on your life and you were to do some kind of like a flow chart, if that goes there and that
Yep.
goes that, and you follow it through and you see all these courses, really, it's all heading you towards one particular direction,
That's
even
right.
if you
Yep.
don't want to recognize that, right? And I think that, and I can say it because, I came from a secular country that doesn't have faith, that and you see it now. You see all the problems that come with that, and we're seeing the problems that come with that in our
in the
country.
US. Yeah.
And not that
Yeah.
I don't want to derail it by talking about that, but I can't. It's like we said before. Like when you were in Somalia, when you were in Somalia, you were ready. You were like, okay, I'm calm, right? And everyone was looking at you. And I can tell people who maybe don't know, everyone was looking at you like, what is going on with Jeff?
That's
Like,
right. Yeah.
he's
Yeah.
so calm. Like, he's like, I've got to get my job done. I'm doing my job. And you're like, you were already gone in your brain, right? It was over
Yeah.
and you were ready. And you're like, okay, yeah, as best as you can, right? And
Right.
I always think that there's, everyone has that moment. If ever you go to the doctors and they say, "Oh, we found a we
We
found
found a
something
mass.
here.
There's
We found
something
a
that's
mass.
not
There's
good here.
something there."
Yeah.
All of a sudden, you realize you go, "Is this it? Like, is this?"
Yeah.
And then everything like aligns. And I think that with soldiers, that first crack, you're like, and this might be it. This might be it. There's
Yep.
no guarantees. There's no. Yeah, as you know, it could quite easily have been you as any of the other guys that didn't make it, right?
Absolutely. Yep.
So all of a sudden, they say there are no atheists in a foxhole. You kind of go and say, okay, well, what does this mean? Like, because I speak to my friends a lot about this. That old adage is like, there's a person floating in the ocean, and they're like, God, why don't you help me? And he's like, well, I sent a plane and I sent a boat. That whole
That's right.
thing. And I think that what's really important and what I had to do was recognize what all this means. Like what is the point of all this, really, in a bigger context? Because you get to those heights and you go, what does it really matter?
Matthew, I'll tell you about one of the most disappointing days of my life in the Army. And it's not, I think it may surprise you. I spent 3 years of my life while I was in the Ranger Regiment preparing every waking moment, spending every ounce of energy that I had, physically exhausting myself every day for the best Ranger competition. In 1994 and 95, I came in fourth place. In 1996, by God's grace, my partner Isaac and I won the Best Ranger competition. And in the military circles, that makes you a legend overnight. And it's kind of the ultimate sign of toughness and your skills as a warrior, the Best Ranger competition. The most disappointing day of my life was the moment after winning the Best Ranger competition, right before the award ceremony the next morning, because I got up the next morning and I was like, I have just given my whole life to one thing. I've got it, and it didn't really fulfill me. It's not what I thought it was. And now what? And that now what question really, really stuck with me. So I want to go all the way down this road with you. You're a guy who I have the greatest respect for. As an actor, your skills and your talent as an entertainer. But my respect for you is your courage to be willing to speak out about your faith in a very hostile environment like Hollywood. And not only do you speak out about it, but man, you live it. You live your faith out with your wife and your family and your 8 children. And you live it out in an environment that it's not easy to consistently live out your faith. So let's go all the way down this road, man. If fame and fortune and success could fill you up, you are the one human being on the planet that should be most satisfied. And what you just said to the listeners is, I had all of that and it didn't fill me up. So now I want you to tell them what did fill you up.
Yeah, well, and by the way, I know Mike Trissler as well. I don't know if you know Mike Trissler.
Yes, of
And
course.
for people that
Mike
don't know,
won the competition in 1995. I chased that guy all over Georgia 2 years in a row.
And by the way, like I just want to tell you this just very quickly. I was down in Louisiana. I was in New Orleans, and I was at a cafe, and this guy came up. It was a black guy, and he was a veteran. He'd come out of the army, and he was signing back up. he come out and he was going back, and he was a ranger, and at the time, he recognized me from Blackhawk Down, and
Uh-huh.
I was talking, and I said, I mean, it was like to say, it's kind of really humbling. So it was like, oh, and that's the way I feel about you guys. I'm like, oh yeah, and he said, I got into Mike Trisler because I just worked with Mike Trisler, and if people don't understand it, like, you are a god if you win the best ranger competition.
It
Like
really is legendary status overnight.
it is. It just is. And he was like, "Oh, Mike Trisler." It was like it was just the biggest thing. And I actually got him on the phone.
He's
I called
talking to
Mike.
you, a Hollywood celebrity, saying, "You know this ranger who won the best ranger competition?"
Well, I'll relate to it. You know what I mean? I'll relate to it. I mean, if you around my room here, I've got posters. I've also got all my challenge coins up there that I got
All
from
right.
all the guys. So it's a big deal.
Yeah.
So yeah, going back to my let me talk about me for a second. But yeah,
Yes.
so I just after I did Blackhawk Down, I did a television pilot, which is now called Legacy. I mean, it was written by Simon Kinberg, who wrote all the X-Men movies, huge guy, and produced by Jerry Bruckheimer, who did Blackhawk Down.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And I was on that with a girl called Joy Lenz, and Joy went on to go and be in One Tree Hill. Wonderful person. And she came up to me one night. She knocks on my door, and she gives me a book, and it's The Case for Christ.
Yeah,
by Lee Strobel. It was totally
Yep.
random, like totally random. She went, "I just want you to have this," and I'm like, "Okay." And so I read the book, and I just went whomp straight through it. And at the end of it, I'm like, "Oh, Jesus is real." Okay, that book made it tangible for me because I'm a little bit more of a logic and reason guy, and the way that Lee breaks it down as a investigative journalist, it made a lot of sense for me. It just did. And so I started reading that. So I read that, and then I read The Case for Faith, and then The Case for Creator, and I was like, okay, all right, this is all real. It was tangible for me. It wasn't like, well, there's God, and there's this guy Jesus, and he wears like big sandals and flowing robes. And it made him real. It made Jesus real for me.
Uh-huh.
And also understanding that, like, I don't feel that on every, because I think a lot of people feel as like Christians, you feel this wonder all the time, and a lot of people just don't. I mean, I think that there's a lot of people that said, that they never felt Christ in their life, but they understood that he was, and I think that that's a really, really important distinction. Right, because it's not about emotions; it's about the truth.
That's right. Yeah.
So I started reading, and then at the same time, so it's funny. Like, the more I read and got into my faith, the less work I got. It was kind of like this, right? It's kind of funny.
How about that? Yeah.
Totally funny, and I can plot it as well. You can really plot and see the twist, right? And then I met my wife, and then I'd come up to her and I'd be like, when we're dating, I'm like, "You got to read this. Like, this. Do you know there's an uncause, first cause? And the argument from, and I was, because I was on a Thomas Aquinas fest, right? Like, finding out that you can actually prove that there's a God by reason, and that to me was like was just like mind blowing to me, and I felt betrayed because nobody had ever told me this, and nobody had ever told me that, and nobody, there's all these things. Growing up as a Catholic in England, just had really, really bad formation. And I was just like, this doesn't make any sense to me. And then I came back and studied, and I felt betrayed because I felt like I hadn't been taught correctly.
Yeah, I love that language. I felt betrayed for not being taught correctly.
I did, and I was a low information Christian. I mean, and it was horrible. And that's why when you realize, here's the funny thing, when people come up and, this, I know you know this, people come up with the arguments, you're like, is that the argument you're going to give me? That is such a softball.
That's the best you got?
It's so weak. So weak. And then they start getting into the straw man arguments. And I know, because I was there. I asked those questions. I made those arguments. And then when you really look at it, you go, it's very simple thinking. And then you have to look and say, well, what is it in your heart that's stopping you from recognizing that this is true? Like genuinely recognizing this is true. And then you look back and you see, well, hang on a minute, there's all these greats throughout the
Yeah.
years, these
Right.
great minds like G.K. Chesterton, C.S. Lewis, and you can go. I mean, those are just the recent ones. I mean, without
Yeah.
going back to the heavy hitters, even going back to Aristotle and Plato, and what they thought, which obviously Augustine and
Right.
Aquinas built
Yeah.
upon that. But I think for me, it was this lie that 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 it's all about like having this complete blind faith, right? Like
Yeah.
you can know God, like you can know God, like tangibly know God. So when I figured that out, I was like, okay, all right. Now, if I lose everything over here, am I okay with that?
Yeah. The career and the contracts
Yeah,
and everything that goes with it. Are you willing to give that up? You might not have to, but are you willing to give that up?
yeah. And I was like, yeah, I am. Because I think that, look, this is what puzzles me as actors. As an actor, you should be pursuing the truth at all costs, right? Whether
Absolutely.
whether
Yep.
it's the truth in the story of a script, whether it's the truth of a character, the arc that they go along, whether it's the truth of the words, whether it's the truth of the scenario, whether it's the truth of the accent, whatever it is, you should be trying to get to the essence of the truth of each element. And so, I'd always done that. Really, I think, like inside me, I was looking for the ultimate truth,
Yeah.
right? I
Right.
was really, and I made tons and tons of mistakes on the way, because I think that what a lot of people don't realize is there's a lot of stuff masquerading as the truth, right? There's
Uh-huh. That's not really the truth. Yep.
that's not the truth at all, and we kind of go, okay, well, I'm going to go down that route because it's easier for me. Um, but nobody ever said it was easy. It was going to be easy, and that's one of the things that I think I had to come to terms with. There's a real struggle when the prayer I used to say every day, and it was the one prayer that I would do. I'd never ask for anything, never, but I just said, God, I want to know you more, and that is a really powerful
That's
prayer
right. That is a,
because
yep.
because God will go, really? Get on your knees. Get on your knees. You're going to lose
Uh-huh.
everything. You're going to lose absolutely everything. Do you know me? Do you know me? Because I'm all you've got, right? So that's the thing. He does, and it's the same thing like I was saying when you're in war, right? You're in war, and you go, this is it. Like
Yeah.
there's it's a life or death scenario. This is a reality. If I die, what does that mean? Right? Help me get through it because you
Right.
can't go because especially I'm talking to an Army Ranger. There are no bigger alpha males on the planet than Army Rangers, right? And for an Army Ranger to have the humility to say it's out of my control, it's all up to you,
That's
right?
right.
And
Yep.
and that's the truth, right? It's the truth. I
It's the
remember
truth. Yep.
what they said to us, which was really funny, and this is something that we could probably learn from the Muslims is that when Somalia was going down, they would take a weapon. This is what the guys said, down to the beach, and there'd be
Uh-huh.
5 of them go down, and 3 of them would come back, right? Because they'd be figuring out how to, figuring out how to work out a weapon, right?
Yeah.
And they'd ultimately die. But this, like when they're in war, Muslims will shoot a bullet up in the air, and they'll go, "God will guide it." Right?
That's
God
right.
will take it
Yeah.
to where it is, right? Now that it's ridiculous, right? But they do have more faith in God
There's a
than
degree of
many
faith in that.
Christians do.
Yep.
Than many Christians do,
Yep.
because they if you realize that none of it is reliant on you, really. I mean, what is it? You work like everything relies on you, and you pray like everything relies
That's
on
right.
God.
Yep.
But the truth of the matter is even when it comes to existence is held in a creation is there being held by God's will alone. Right? If He didn't will it, it would all go away.
Right.
And when you really understand that and you go, wow, okay, there was nothing, then there was something, and that something was created by will, and matter was created by will. And then the way I say it is this, Jeff, is that if you make a chair out of wood, and the creator of that chair walks out of the room, the chair will still be there because it was
Right.
made of something other than the creator, right? Well, we are held in existence by the creator. And if the
Right.
creator walks out of the room, we're in a lot of trouble because there's
That's
nothing else
exactly
that we're
right.
reliant on.
Yeah.
So
Right.
that's a real thing for me. And again, if you strip it all away, right, and you get around the straw man arguments, which 90% of these arguments are straw man arguments about the existence of God, what have you got left, right? And so if for people who don't know, like Pascal's wager, right? Pascal's wager was basically like, okay, I believe in God, you don't believe in God, right? If there is a God, I'm okay, relatively,
Yeah.
I'm in a lot of trouble. If there is no God, I'm okay and you're okay, so it doesn't matter. So Pascal's wager is you might want to bet on the fact that there's a
Yeah.
God.
If you're going to take a bet, you might want to bet on God. Right.
Yeah, and I mean, all these things I feel that they're not explained enough to people because I think a lot of people I would say focus too much on Jesus, but you understand what I mean when I say
Yeah, sure.
like we talk about this figure and the Bible is an authority when people don't believe that the Bible is an authority and they don't believe that Jesus is the Son of God. So you have to take it back before that and you have to talk
Right.
about like what is existence? Where does it come from? And can we know that there's a God outside of the Bible? Because we can. Right, we can, and that argument really, I think that was what moved things for me, and then everything else makes sense after that. When you go through the Old Testament to the New Testament, oh, hang on a second, the fact that Jesus would be alive when he was of the lineage that he was, and all the other things is the equivalent of a tornado going through a wrecking yard and
That's
assembling
exactly
a
right. Yeah.
747. Like you are being delusional if you don't think that is even just say it's special.
Right.
It's just special,
Yeah.
right? So for me, that's what happened, and I went through that process, understanding Aquinas's proofs for the existence of God, which then, if you follow it through and you truly read the Old Testament, look at the Old Testament and where it was going, and that Jesus was a fulfillment of that, and then go through Jesus's life and then understand how that affects you. And what is actually going on there, and understand like that we are we had a covenant relationship with God. It looks like this: we had a covenant relationship with God, then we broke it, right? With sin, so we broke that. So we need the watchmaker to come back in and fix us. You have to put your ego to one side, especially, and this is what's difficult is if you've sinned, which everyone has, because people think, that it's all unforgivable. There's only one unforgivable sin, right? But the fact is that grace and gratitude is just incredible. It's really, really incredible. It's transformative. And all I can say is I'm just very, very blessed to have the trajectory that I was on. And I don't think there is any country in the world that I could have had the same journey. And that is why this country is so important. Yeah. It's so important to fight for this country. Even if it's a moral, on moralistic levels, like on ethical levels, it's super important to fight for it. So you have this kind of like this journey that America is very, very special. But it's special when it's in combination with faith.
That's right.
You can't detach America from that.
Yeah.
You can't.
One of my favorite American presidents of all time made the statement, America is a great nation because it's a good nation. By good, it meant moral. This is President Ronald Reagan, who meant morally good. And I'll never forget the way Reagan said this, if America stops being good, morally good, she will also stop being a great country.
No, I was just saying that I think that people look and see, and this is one of the things that kind of drives me a little bit bonkers. Good doesn't mean perfect.
That's right. Yeah, I'm living proof of that, as are you.
I don't know about you, but I'm pretty perfect. I tell my wife that all the time.
All right. Yeah, and I'm sure that goes over pretty well with her. You're talking right now about one of my greatest heroes of the faith of all time, a guy by the name of Augustine. We call him Saint Augustine, and he described how all of us, and I am living proof of this, you're describing it in this episode. All of us have this hole in our heart, and we try everything, a career and success and fame and fortune, and maybe it'll fill that hole up. And for me, there was lots of things that I tried, and none of it filled my hole up. And then Saint Augustine said it this way: that hole is uniquely shaped like God and by God, and only God can fill that hole up. And to try to fill it up with anything else is going to leave you let down.
Yeah.
And you have demonstrated that really well for us in this interview. Matthew, I'm not starstruck at all. There's only really two celebrities that I would ever like to meet, and I would only like to shake their hand. I don't even need to take a selfie with them. Besides you, it's Jim Caviezel, because of how very open he is about his faith. It's Gary Sinise because of how intensely patriotic he is and how much he does for warriors. And in you, Matthew, and I'm not saying this because of this episode, I mean these words, you are both. You have the Jim Caviezel faith and you have the Gary Sinise patriotism. And man, this has been an honor for me. But before I let you go, I got to say one thing. I hated with a passion war movies. The only war movie that I could really stand before Blackhawk Down was the movie Saving Private Ryan. And I hated war movies because they didn't really represent the warriors or what really happened. So all the way back to the beginning of this interview today, when I met you guys at IHOP, I had this absolute frustration with the fact that this was even being made into a movie. I never, ever wanted my name associated with it. I never wanted it made into a movie. After the movie was released, when they showed this pre-release screening to us that were in Somalia, here in Georgia, Brian Van Holt, who played me in the movie, called me and he said, "Jeff, what do you think?" And I said, "Brian, I am so proud of what you did in this movie." I actually said this to Mark Bowden, to Jerry Bruckheimer, to Ridley Scott, to all of the actors that I've talked to, and I need to say it to you. I've said it privately on the phone. I need to say it to you publicly. I am extremely proud of what you did with the movie Black Hawk Down. I don't know that you could make a major motion picture and make it more accurate than what you guys did. And Matthew, what you did in that movie portrayed the Rangers and the special operators, the whole force. You guys portrayed it well, and I'm proud that my name is associated with that movie. So thank you for representing us well, man.
Well, that's really humbling. It's what every actor really wants to hear when they go out and do something so special, and it means the world to me. It really does. I said to Ian Virgo, who played Waddell in the film, I turned to him and I said, "If we never do another movie again, it's okay, because it doesn't get any better than that." Yeah. You know, it really does. And by the way, Gary's the real deal. I know Gary very well, and he is exactly what you think he is. And I do know Jim, not as well, but I do know Jim, and he's an incredible human being. Like he's amazing. So good choices for those guys.
In my mind, you're Gary and Jim in one package, and this interview has been we've spent months and months working on this, but this interview has been a highlight for me, just to be able to look you over the screen in the eyes and say thank you for doing this story, and thank you for doing it so well, man. This interview has been awesome.
Yeah, right back at you. Rangers lead the way.
All the way, buddy. Matthew's not just famous, he is definitely not just a pretty face. He told you more than a few examples of how hard work can get you to your dreams in life. But if you missed everything else about this episode with Matthew, when you were driving, when you were doing the dishes, when you were listening, I hope you didn't miss Matthew's explanation of what really filled him up, what really filled up this hole that he had in his heart. Matthew, thank you for being the grand finale guest on this mini series of stories that I wish made it into the book or the movie Blackhawk Down, but didn't make it. I hope you, the podcast listener, enjoyed this episode as much as I did. And by the way, if you stumbled across this podcast for the first time, why don't you go ahead and subscribe right there on your favorite podcast platform? Or did you know that this episode, like all of them, are on video in YouTube? You can always subscribe there and just watch this at your leisure. I'm using the British definition of leisure because of Matthew's awesome accent. We're also, of course, on social media. If you just search on all of the prominent social media platforms, search for @Unbeatable Podcast, you're going to meet some amazing people like my buddy, Ben Cochran. Ben, you are the guest of the week this week. And Ben, I've known you for a long, long time. That's not why you're the guest of the week. I am proud of you. I'm proud of your family. I'm proud of the guy that you are. And thank you for being so connected with us on social media. Ben, you are our guest of the week this week. Hey, did you guys know that I have a force of people that we're getting connected to one another? I'm sending content all week long to them. We call them the Unbeatable Army, and the Unbeatable Army are getting material from me throughout the week, not just podcast episodes. If you want to become part of the Unbeatable Army, it's free. Just go over to unbeatablearmy.com. Thanks, Matthew. Thanks, Matt Eversman. Thanks all of the guests over the last few weeks that have been willing to share their stories that I wish made it into the book or the movie Blackhawk Down, but didn't. And now, hang on with us because next week I'll bring you another amazing guest. Thanks for being with me. Have a great week. God bless.